Ladies, gentlemen and crime fanatics, welcome to today's episode of From Crime to Court, where today we'll be covering Mary Ann Cotton. Female serial killers are a rare phenomenon in the world of murder and can be categorised into two categories, the Angel of Death and the Black Widow. Mary Ann Cotton is one of the most prolific of the phenomenon, born in Sunderland, North East England, 1832. Her father, a coal miner, was killed after he fell down a mine shaft when Mary was 8. This caused the family to fall into poverty, causing her to retain the fear of becoming destitute. Her mother did remarry, which eased her family's financial worries. However, she did not like her stepfather. At 16, she left her family house and became a nurse. At 20, she married her first husband, and this started the seemingly endless path of her murders. The couple had 5 children in Plymouth. Sadly, 4 died from what the doctor called intestinal disorders. The couple eventually moved back north, where they had 3 more children who also died of the same circumstances. Then their father also died of the same disorder. Mary seemed to show no emotion and collected a payout from the insurance. She then married George Ward in 1865. He then died a little over a year later of stomach issues. Mary collected the life insurance policy of her second husband with no opposition. Her third husband, James Robinson, was more cautious than the first two. After his children began to die, and Mary tried to convince him to get a life insurance policy, he threw her out of his house. She then moved in with Frederick Conn, who was more gullible. Inevitably, his children began to die. As Mary was still married to her previous husband, they entered into a bigamous relationship, and of course, after he took out a life insurance policy, he died. She then began a relationship with Joseph Nattrass and began a job as a nurse, and started an affair with John Quick Manning. Well, actually, the records show there was never a John Quick Manning to be born, and it was more likely that her affair was with Richard Quick Mann. She had 3 more children with Nattrass during this time. She then became pregnant for the 12th time with Manning's child, and she decided she would marry him. However, Nattrass and her 3 children were getting in the way of her plans. As her 3 children died, her husband Charles Cotton was the last person in her way, and his death would be her undoing. A local magistrate had seen Charles before his death, and he said he looked in perfect health, and therefore he went to the police, which led to an inquiry and the discovery that he had been poisoned with arsenic, and Mary was arrested for his murder. Mary was put on trial for Charles's murder, which lasted a few weeks. This trial led to investigative journalists uncovering the details of the other deaths that surrounded Mary, and as the legislation which controls the press now were not in place at the time, lurid stories were published before the trial had finished. The prosecution wanted to introduce this knowledge into the case, however the judge would not allow it. Mary was found guilty of murder and was sentenced to death. There was an attempt to get her sentence reduced to a life sentence. However, this failed, and she was hung at Durham County Jail on March 24, 1873. Although this was a highly used method of execution at the time, the executioner botched the job by misjudging the length of the rope needed to successfully hang her. So instead of dying from a broken neck, Mary was left to slowly strangle to death, finally ending her reign of terror that ended the lives of over 20 people, including her husbands, lovers, and her children.